begin this morning a little before 9:30 with an in-chambers conference with the court and counsel. We are now in open court, ready to proceed. Witness may return to the stand. Still under oath?
Yes, sir.
And you may bring the jury. Back in session. Thank you for waiting on us while I dealt with some matters in your absence. We are now ready to proceed. You may continue with direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Good morning, Sergeant Hulen.
Good morning.
Sergeant Hulen, when we broke yesterday, we were speaking about your kind of initial involvement in the case, and you mentioned that you'd been to the Matthews residence, and at that point, you went back to your office and did some other follow-up investigation. Is that about where we left off?
That is correct.
Sergeant Hulen, after you spoke to the Matthews, what did you do, sir, in terms of how you followed up on this case?
After I left the Matthews residence, I went back to my office and I called up Officer Wall. I didn't call him up earlier because I knew he just got off night shift, and I wanted to go over his report that he filed.
Why did you want to talk with Officer Wall about some of the statements that he had noted in his report?
I wanted to make sure that there was no misunderstanding, that it was correct, and verify that there was nothing else that maybe at the time he didn't note that he thought would be relevant now, or that I thought would be relevant now.
And after you talked to Mrs. Matthews, were there some things in Officer Wall's report that you wanted to confirm with him specifically?
Yes.
What were those things that you wanted to talk with him about?
Objection.
Overruled.
I wanted to go over the 911 call for Miss Anna. I wanted to verify a little bit of the timeline and some of the statements that he said in his report.
And what specifically did you talk with Officer Wall about?
The fact that when the Dr. Matthews came down the stairs, he said, "Oh my God, JT is dead." I wanted to verify a little bit more about this. I think he used the term on the phone, the silhouette of a woman in the window when he knocked on the back door or the side door of the house. At the same time, he saw the light go on upstairs or a woman come to the window upstairs. I wanted to verify that he was confident that that could not have been the same exact person. That the person simply went upstairs. The conversation that he had about what time he heard about JT, the conversation he had with Mrs. Matthews about the conversation about who we saw in the window in the kitchen.
And specifically in regards to, we'll start with you said you wanted to talk with Officer Wall about the statement of, "Oh my God, JT's dead." What about that did you talk with Officer Wall about?
Well, he said that the Dr. Matthews came downstairs and said, "Oh my God, JT is dead." Officer Wall told me that he denied knowledge of that. He did know that, in fact, it was a fatal crash. He did not know the victim's name, but surely wouldn't know his initials, but they would call him as JT.
When you say he denied knowledge of the death, who
Officer Wall.
Yes, sir.
Officer Wall knew that there was a fatality. He did not know the deceased name at that time.
Objection.
Sustained as to this witness's testimony as to what Officer Wall knew, you may consider it for such purposes as what Officer Wall told him and to corroborate the testimony of Officer Wall if you find that it does corroborate Officer Wall's testimony.
Thanks, sir. And then how about the conversation regarding the silhouette of the female? What did you want to verify with Officer Wall regarding that?
Well, I wanted to make sure that the person he saw in the kitchen could not have been Mrs. Matthews, who we saw upstairs. And he did verify that, according to, he felt very confident that there was no way that this person he saw in the kitchen was Mrs. Matthews.
And how about Anna Ergish? What did you talk to Officer Wall about with there? Officer Wall regarding Anna Ergish, excuse me.
Well, that after he advised that there was discussion that he couldn't have seen a woman in the kitchen, that it was just her husband, and her son at the residence, he brought it up again that he did, in fact, see someone else in the house, and there was a woman. And at that, around the same time, Dr. Matthews came downstairs and said, "Oh my God, JT is dead." At that time, he stopped at that line of questioning and went to the next phase.
And then did you talk to Officer Wall about Dr. Matthews' statement that Dr. Matthews had called JT's father?
Yes. He advised that, if you just give me a second. Yes, he advised that Dr. Matthews stated that he had in fact called JT's father to come pick him up.
And Sergeant Hulen, you testified that you've had multiple interactions with Trooper Taylor regarding the events in question. At any point has Trooper Taylor advised you that Dr. Matthews called him that night?
Correct. He did not call him that night. We have spoken to him. We've looked through some of the phones at the screenshots that we've provided, that there was no calls other than the call, I believe it was at 11:10 to the house. There was no other calls with them.
And 11:10 is when the Taylors called the Matthews, and then the Matthews did call the Taylors, but that was at what time?
They called them back at 1:06, I believe, and because she had saw the flashing message as she was getting ready, and she called them back. But other than that, there was no other phone conversations.
That you're aware of during the course of this investigation?
That is correct.
Now, Sergeant Hulen, tell us kind of a little bit after you spoke with Officer Wall, what your next step in this investigation was, sir.
Well, early in the day, I had received, I requested via email with the supervisor of our dispatcher, the 911 emergency communications. I requested a copy of the 911 call that came from the house, and at that time I had it received while I requested in the morning. By the time I came back after these interviews, it was on my desk.
And which 911 call are you referring to, Sergeant Hulen?
The alcohol call for Anna Ergish.
Not the call from the crash scene, but from the Matthews residence.
That is correct.
What happened next, Sergeant Hulen?
After that, at 2:30 that afternoon, June the 30th, I went to the residence of Natalie Freeman.
And how had you learned of Natalie Freeman's involvement in this case?
Anna Ergish had told me all the kids her age that were together.
And before Anna Ergish told you about this, about Natalie Freeman, did you know of her involvement in the case?
Not at all.
And did you recognize the name of Natalie Freeman separate and apart from this investigation, Sergeant Hulen?
I did not recognize her name. However, I do work at an off-duty job 2-3 times a month as a school resource officer at Cardinal Gibbons. When I saw her, I recognized her. I don't think I ever had a conversation with her, just recognized her as one of the hundreds of students that I've passed throughout the years working out there.
And where did you meet with Natalie, Sergeant Hulen?
I knocked on a door, which is at 114 East Park Drive in Raleigh, just off Hillsborough Street. I met with her and her father, Brad Freeman, and we sat down on the porch and talked outside the house.
And Ms. Freeman's testified here, or Natalie's testified here in front of the jury, and you've been here this entire trial. Anything different, what she testified here in court, differ from what she told you back in July of 2014?
No, it was very similar.
Did you learn anything new from Natalie that helped you along in your investigation in any way, or did she just kind of corroborate what Anna had said?
She also added Anna neglected to tell me, but she added that her, Anna, Thomas Matthews, and J.T. Taylor had gone to the ABC store in Cameron Village and purchased a bottle of Jack Daniel's honey. She provided me with a description of what Thomas Matthews, she said he went into the store. She provided me what he was wearing, which was a tuxedo, and that he had come out with the bottle of alcohol.
And so that was new information that Anna had not told you.
That is correct.
And I believe we talked about that a little bit yesterday, that once you learned that information from Natalie, you went back and confronted Anna with that information.
Not that day, but yes, I did.
Anything else different, or anything else that you learned from Natalie that day assisted you in your investigation?
No.
What did you do next, sir?
I contacted Agent Hill.
I will
Sorry.
interrupt you, Sergeant Hulen, I apologize. She testified as to a time in which she called her father to pick her up. Did she give you that information when you went there that day?
Yes, she gave me times, and she also showed me the phones that her and her father that helped verify the timeline. They knew approximately at 10 o'clock, but yes, at 10:17, she texted her father and asked to come pick him up.
And did you learn when he, in fact, did arrive to pick her up?
At 10:28 p.m. that night, he arrived at the house.
Thank you, Sergeant. Who did you go speak to next?
I called up Agent Hill, the alcohol law enforcement who's sitting in the courtroom today. He had called up earlier in the day, left me a message, or maybe he left me or my lieutenant a message, I'm not 100% sure, and offered ALE's assistance in any way. Early in the day, I did not call him. However, based on this information, I wanted to get the video from the ABC store, and Agent Hill would be the best person to help me get that video.
After you spoke, and Agent Hill does a little something different than what you do at Raleigh Police Department, the Raleigh Police Department.
Yes.
What does he do that's different?
They would handle a lot more of the alcohol type charges, and we have the capability to. They will keep an eye on parties, bars, establishments, ABC stores, them in conjunction with the ABC officers help to make sure that those systems are running smoothly.
And on that same day, sir, did you next talk to Josh McCoy?
Yes, on July 1st at 10 in the morning, I met with Josh McCoy at his residence.
And Josh testified here for us earlier this week, excuse me. You were here for his testimony. Anything different that you recall from the statements he gave here in court?
There were, yes, for the night in question, there was no other differences.
So was there anything different that you heard here in court than what he told you back in July?
He advised about past actions at the Matthews residence.
And from your, and what did he tell you about that?
Objection. I ask counsel to approach, please.
When you spoke with Josh and the other individuals there, Natalie and Anna, Josh, how much alcohol did he consume there at the party, according to what you learned during the course of the investigation?
He advised that he was not drinking, which was pretty consistent. Some people thought he had a glass of wine. Some people said he took a taste of the Jack Daniels. But if he did have any, it was very little compared to the other kids, teenagers.
And he mentioned when you were talking to him back in July of 2014 about how the wine was presented on the table. Is that right, sir?
Yes.
How did he advise that the wine was presented on the table for guests to consume?
He advised that he did see bartenders, but he also saw that wine was pre-poured and laid out on the tables. But so he wasn't 100% sure, but he did see wine that was open up to the table for people to walk up and take.
And his other friends, when you talked to him about were they drinking, how did he respond to that?
Yes, he admitted that they were all drinking.
And how about in terms of if they were drinking out in the open or hiding it, what did he say about that?
He said that it was not hidden. With the exception of Jack Daniels, it was not hidden, the wine throughout the night.
All right. After you spoke with Josh, at that point, did you contact the members of Parazon to set up a meeting with them?
Yes. On July 1st, I contacted Joshua Weaver, who I knew about the restaurant, but I saw on the internet that he was the catering supervisor. And I contacted him, and I asked if I can come on down to the restaurant, and I requested if he could to try to get as much of the employees together just to make it easier for me, since a lot of them live in Durham and Chapel Hill, a little bit further out than me.
And did they accommodate your request and in fact set up a meeting there at Parazon?
He did.
When was that meeting?
At 1 o'clock that afternoon, I went to the restaurant, which is at 2200 West Main Street, and I met with all the servers with the exception of one that were at the wedding that night.
And who did you meet with there, sir?
I met with Casey Miller. I met with a Miss Foster, Michelle Rassick, and Algie Walker, and a Randy Towns.
And again, sir,
And I also met with Josh Weaver, and I also met with the owner of the restaurant.
specifically in regards to what Josh Weaver told you, he tell you anything different in terms of what he's told the members of the jury here this week?
Nothing tremendously different, no.
And Ms. Foster, she's testified here as well, specifically in regards to how the alcohol was presented to the guests that night. What did she tell you in terms of how it was presented?
I recall her saying pre-poured during busy times and served during not so busy times.
And she mentioned earlier when she testified about a conversation, about her interactions or a couple interactions with JT and the other individuals. Do you recall that, sir?
Yes. She advised that at one time Thomas and JT had approached her and asked her for the bubbly stuff.
And what did she give them?
She offered them water, and she told them that she heard them talking about high school and graduation and to come back in a couple of years, something to that effect.
At any point during your conversation with Ms. Foster back on July 1st of 2014, did she indicate that she served those children, teenagers, alcohol?
She stated that she did not.
And she specifically remembered them?
She did.
Sergeant Hulen, I wanna turn your attention on until until you're, let me have just a moment. Skip ahead to July 28th, 2014. I believe it's page 13 of your supplement.
Yes.
Who did you speak to there on July 28th, 2014?
I spoke with Brian Johnson.
And what did you speak with Mr. Johnson about? Or why did you speak with Mr. Johnson? Let me ask you that way.
Well, there was
How did his name come up?
There was some conversation in particular about JT having a conversation with, I heard a bald guy, with a funny haircut that was tall, but it was something to do about yoga. So I contacted attorney Roger Smith Jr. and asked if he could ask the family if they can assist me in identifying who this yoga person is.
And that ended up being Mr. Johnson?
It was.
Was he kind of known throughout this investigation as the yoga guy?
That's how I always referred to him, yes.
Okay. And did Mr. Johnson agree to meet with you?
Yes.
Tell us about your conversation with him.
We met at a coffee shop right over here on right off Hargett Street. And he advised that he was at the reception. He walked in, and towards the end, he didn't have much interaction with any of the teenagers. He was dancing a lot, and he advised that around 10 o'clock he walked through the library area of the house, and he saw JT sitting there, and he told me that it was obvious that he was intoxicated, and he said something to the effect of just alcohol, and JT responded that he was stoned also.
Sergeant Hulen, did he say if JT stayed there in the room with him?
He said that he started to talk to him, but JT quickly excused himself and said he had to check on his friend who was puking downstairs.
Now, during the course of your investigation, and specifically in talking with Mrs. Matthews, did she tell you how JT got in that room, in that library room that you've been seeing?
Yes, she walked JT to the library inside the house.
And you mentioned her, I believe yesterday, that she left him there.
Correct.
Was it your understanding, talking with Mr. Johnson, that that's where JT was when he found him?
That would seem to fit the timeline, yes.
He mentioned, again, I think you mentioned that Mr. Johnson said that JT appeared to be stoned. And at any point, did you find any evidence of marijuana use in your investigation?
I did not.
Did you ask Mr. Johnson about if he had done any drugs or drank any alcohol with JT?
I did.
And what was his response?
He's advised that he did not have anything to drink or do any drugs with JT.
I want to go to July 30th, which is page 14 of your supplement. Who did you meet with on July 30th, sir? In terms of witnesses that we've heard from in this case.
I met with Scott Regenbach.
And his wife, Lindsay, testified here in court. Was she present when you interviewed Scott Regenbach?
She was not.
Where is your understanding that Scott Regenbach is at this time? Do you know?
Oh, he is, I believe, in London. I know he's overseas for a school trip, so he's out of the country.
And then on July 31st, who did you meet with in terms of witnesses that we talked with on this case? Heard from in this case?
On July 31st, I went to the residence of Sharon Beinecke, a school teacher that testified earlier from Ravenscroft, I guess now retired school teacher from Ravenscroft.
And Ms. Beinecke testified earlier this week about the awkward moment that she had with the students or her former students out in front of the house. Did she tell you about that?
Yes, she did tell me about the awkward moment, yes.
August 5th of 2014, where did you go at that point, sir?
Myself and Officer Manukas responded to Sanford, North Carolina, to meet with the photographer Thad and his wife Sarah Lawrence at their residence, which is also their studio.
And what did they provide you with while you were there?
They provided us with the pictures that they took at the wedding that day.
And many of the photographs that we've seen here during the course of this trial.
Yes.
That took some time to download those photographs, didn't it, off Sergeant Hulen?
Yes, I didn't realize how long it was going to take, but yes, we were there for about 2 hours, if not longer.
And during the course of your talk with, while you were there with the Lawrences, did you ask them about what they noticed?
Yeah, I remember the photographer asked us if he was allowed to ask why we wanted the photos. I advised that we were investigating a crash in which one of the young people leaving the wedding died. He immediately started to tell me and also Manukas what he remembered about the day.
So he volunteered this information to you?
Yes, so when I went there, I was wrong, but I didn't go there with the impression that he would be, I was just going to get the pictures. I guess I figured with so much time had passed, I didn't expect him to be much of a witness. I figured he'd be running around taking a lot of pictures, but I was wrong.
What did he tell you about what he remembered about the teenagers there specifically?
He told me that there was a group of 5 kids in particular, and that there was 3 boys and 2 girls. He remembered that both of the girls were wearing blue dresses and had blonde hair. He advised that it was obvious that all, with the exception of the tall kid, who he later pointed out as the pictures were downloading, as Josh McCoy, were intoxicated.
He said all but Josh.
All but Josh McCoy.
Right.
We asked him what made him form that opinion, and he advised that there was times that there was conversation where the boys in particular were talking to him, and he couldn't really understand what they were saying. They were maybe a little bit louder than normal, and he remembered making eye contact with Josh, who kind of made a nonverbal to him that he understood, that he took it to be, yes, I understand, that they're intoxicated.
And did he tell you anything else there about what he saw Thomas doing there at one point?
Yeah, at one point he said that he went upstairs to use the bathroom, and he saw Thomas kissing one of the blonde girls in the blue dress. He wasn't sure which one, upstairs.
Sergeant Hulen, after completing kind of these interviews and doing this follow-up there as late as August 5th of 2014, at that point was the decision made to charge Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews?
It was.
And Thomas Matthews?
It was.
I skipped a pretty big time period there from, I guess, early July until kind of late July when we started talking about interviewing some of the other folks. Generally, what were you doing during that time period, Sergeant Hulen, in terms of investigating this matter? Or were you investigating this matter at that time?
Well, we were waiting for, in particular, the ME's report to come back. It was kind of a standstill on that to get the exact level of intoxication for JT. And we're also meeting with Roger Smith, who's an attorney. He had some scheduling conflicts. I had some vacations. We met with the district attorney, yourself, in the district attorney's office. And with schedules, there was a little bit of a time lapse, yes.
Other than the initial meeting with Kimberly Matthews there at her home, I believe on June 30th, did you ever interview her again, Sergeant Hulen?
No.
And how about Dr. Matthews? Did you ever interview him?
No.
You mentioned that there were a series of meetings going on, and during those meetings, were you asked to do further investigation in terms of talk to these other witnesses and gather the photographs and whatnot?
Yes. In particular, there was some discussion about, I don't know whose idea was it, with the photographer, but I remember that came up at a meeting. Why don't we see if we can figure out who the photographer was? And we found out about the teachers from Ravenscroft. We figured that we would try to talk to them. So yeah, little stuff came up at meetings for a little bit more follow-up.
And when you brought these charges upon Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews, regarding these 4 underage teenagers, you had to determine the ages of everyone, is that right, sir?
That is correct.
In regards to Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews, how old were they at the time of the incident on June 28th of 2014?
Were they yes.
What were their ages?
I know Kimberly Matthews is 7/26/62.
How about Dr. Matthews?
I will have to look through. I don't have Dr. Matthews in front of me. I can find it by looking through some of the supplements. I have Dr. Matthews' birthday listed in the supplement by Officer Wall as February 3rd, 1955.
And to be clear, you did not charge a count regarding Josh McCoy, is that right, sir?
That's correct.
And why did you decide not to charge the Matthews with anything regarding Josh McCoy?
I wasn't confident. I couldn't feel confident that he, in fact, did drink alcohol.
And that was based on the witness statements that you talked to?
Correct.
Or the witnesses that you had spoken with? Okay, we'll start with Anna Urish. Did you have her date of birth or age as of June 28th, 2014?
Yes, her birthday is April 20th, 1996.
Natalie Freeman?
Natalie Freeman's birthday is December 20th, 1996.
Thomas Matthews?
November 22nd, 1995.
And Jonathan Taylor?
January 30th, 1996.
So at the time of this event, all of those teenagers were under the age of 21 years of age?
That is correct.
And the Matthews were over 21 years of age?
That is correct.
May I have a moment, Charles?
You may.
Thank you, Sergeant Hulen. I don't have any further questions at this time, Charles.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Sergeant Hulen.
Morning, sir.
Previous to June 30th of last year, you didn't participate in the investigation of this case, did you?
Correct. I did not come in. I could not come in that night.
And so June 30th, the first thing you did was to go visit the Taylor family. Is that correct?
The first thing I did was review some of the stuff that I read, and then, yes, early in the day, I went to the Taylor family.
And you wanted to obviously express your condolences and then obviously get any facts that may be pertinent to the investigation. Is that right?
That is correct.
And was Sergeant Glenn Powell there with you and with the Taylors, do you recall?
I don't know if we did not go in together. I never met him before until that day. I'm not sure if we arrived at the same time. I believe he was already there.
So he just happened to be there when you went to go visit the Matthews?
Correct.
All right. And you talked to both Ms. Matthews and excuse me, not Ms. Matthews, apologize. I'll withdraw that question, Your Honor. Both Ms. Taylor and Trooper Taylor about the late hours of June 28th and the early morning hours of June 29th. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And did at that time Carrie Taylor tell you about her conversation with Kim Matthews that happened at approximately 1:06 a.m. on June 29th?
Yes.
And did you record that in your report as to exactly what she said? As far as what Ms. Taylor told you that Kimberly Matthews said?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what that was, please?
She advised that she said, "Oh my God," several times when they spoke, and she told her about the death. Ms. Taylor advised that Kim Matthews got back on the phone and stated that JT was stumbling, and I told him to stand by.
And did she said that, she didn't tell you that Kim said that people said a bald guy picked up JT and that people thought it was his father.
Correct.
Okay. And did when you interviewed Kim Matthews, did she express to you that her understanding or what she thought was that JT's father, Trooper Taylor, had picked him up?
Yes.
Did Kim Matthews at any point tell you that JT had told her that his father was coming to pick him up? Do you recall that?
I don't recall that. I know that JT had mentioned to her that he was spending the night.
With regards to the Matthews and your investigation, when Kim Matthews agreed to meet with you, she did not have an attorney there when you came to interview her, did she?
That is correct.
And is it fair to say that was a fairly brief interview, 30 or 45 minutes?
Yes.
And did she invite you into her home, and did she give you free reign as far as looking at whatever you wanted to look at?
Yes.
And so you got to see the library?
I did.
True? You got to see the basement?
I did.
You got to see the back patio?
I looked outside for the kitchen, but yes.
And did you discover anything about the house itself that you thought might be significant to the investigation?
No.
But is it fair to say that the library is in the back of the house close to the patio?
My recollection is there's the back patio, the kitchen, and then the library connects to it.
Okay. So they're all very close together. Kitchen, back patio, and library?
That's my recollection of it, yes.
And you reviewed the photos of the wedding, correct?
Yes.
Did you go through all the photos?
I did not.
Okay. Why didn't you go through all the photos?
Manukas took that assignment. At points he showed me a few, but I did not go through every single one of them.
And with regards to interviewing Anna Ergish and Natalie Freeman on June 30th of 2014, and I refer you to your report, I believe it starts on maybe page 4. Did you tell Anna Ergish that you were aware that she was cited for alcohol consumption by another officer and that you were not going to ask questions about that case? You told her that, right?
I did.
And then with Natalie Freeman, pointing your attention to page 7 of your supplement, you met with Natalie and her father, Brad Freeman, is that correct?
Natalie Freeman, yes, and her father, yes.
Okay. Did you say to Natalie and her father, or explain that you were not concerned about her underage consumption?
For criminal charges, correct.
Okay. And so that's what you used, those exact words? You
Yes.
weren't concerned about her underage alcohol consumption?
Yes.
And of course, she did not get charged with anything, correct?
She did not.
You were at that point focused on trying to get information with regard to what happened to JT. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And so with regards to Josh, did you say something similar to him, even though at that point you didn't really have any information that Josh had anything to drink, right?
I'm sure, I probably did, but I wasn't, that is correct. That would have been standard of how I felt.
Okay. And with regards to Josh, the witness statements, you had some witness statements that indicated that he had possibly a sip of whiskey or gotten a glass of champagne, a glass of wine at the wedding. Is that right?
That is correct.
And of course, those would be criminal violations, correct? Underage
Correct.
consumption or underage possession.
Yes.
With regards to Cafe Parazide, you indicated that you interviewed several of the employees there, and you said they were all there at one time. Is that right?
They were all there. I talked to them each separately.
You talked to each separately?
Yes.
Were any other officers with you at that time?
It was just me.
And did you inform the bartenders that it was their responsibility to check identification when they served alcohol?
Yes.
But the decision was made not to charge them with any any violations, correct?
Correct.
And of course, they denied serving any alcohol. Is that true?
That is correct. They denied it and had no proof that they did.
And as far as George Bakashaw, who was the owner of Cafe Parasite, you interviewed him, correct?
I did.
Okay. And you interviewed Josh Weaver as well, correct?
I did.
And there were some other individuals that you interviewed that were not bartenders, right? That was some of the servers and kitchen workers?
Correct.
After you met, and that was on July 1st when you met with those employees, correct?
Yes, July 1st, starting at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
So then you decided to go back to Anna Ergus, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And again, you reiterated to her that you were not concerned about the alcohol consumption. You wanted to get the truth about JT, is that right?
Yes.
And you told her she owed it to the Taylors to be honest, right?
I did.
Okay. Is it fair to say that the Matthews family cooperated in providing the Raleigh Police Department with information concerning contact people such as photographers?
Yes.
Okay. And with information concerning potential guests like Brian Johnson?
Yes.
Did you ever seek to interview Alex Matthews?
No.
Why not?
Just did not.
Okay. And with regards to Chip Matthews, you decided not to ask him for an interview, right?
We never got to that point, correct.
And so by July 2nd, did you have a meeting with Officer Manukas and Eric Hill from the ALE at that time?
Yes.
Okay. So, and you were talking about potential charges and where the investigation should go, right?
It was very early, but yes, we were talking about possibilities, potentials, next steps.
And at that point, you hadn't talked to Thomas Matthews, right?
Correct.
But at some point, you did interview him, right?
I did.
And then you hadn't seen the wedding photos at that point, correct?
I did not.
And of course, as we just talked about, you hadn't talked to Chip Matthews, right?
Correct.
Hadn't talked to Alex Matthews, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Hadn't talked to the photographers, correct?
Correct.
Hadn't talked to the Ravenscroft teachers.
Correct.
Right. On July 3rd, you reached out to Jeff Cruden to update, and who was with his Wake County District Attorney's Office, to update him on your investigation, correct?
Yes.
And you expressed to him at that time that you felt that Chip and Kim Matthews should be charged. Is that correct?
Sustained.
Your Honor, can we approach?
You may.
Sergeant Hulen, you were able to retrieve J.T. Taylor's phone, correct?
Correct.
And all the information from that was downloaded, correct?
Yes.
And you received some information from Carrie Taylor's phone, is that right?
Correct.
Did you download any information from Natalie Freeman's phone Anna Argus's phone, Josh McCoy's phone, or Thomas Matthews' phone?
I did not.
Did you ever ask Kim Matthews to provide you her phone?
I did not.
So on July 21st, did you have a conversation with Trooper Taylor about other potential information that you might need to pursue?
Yes.
Okay. And did you interview Robert Vaughn, who was a neighbor of the Matthews?
I did.
And then on July 22nd, you interviewed Thomas Matthews, and he had an attorney present, correct? Roger Smith Jr.
Yes.
But he gave you a full statement, correct?
Yes.
Then on July 30th, 2014, you met with Trooper Taylor and Carrie Taylor. Is that correct?
Yes, with Mr. Cruden and Mr. Waller and also Manukas.
And then you interviewed Scott Riggenbach on July 30th.
Yes.
And then on July 31st, did you retrieve some photos from Anna Argus?
Yes.
And you talked to Sharon Beinecke around that time too?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with regards to the timeline, you weren't, since you didn't deal with the photographs mainly, you weren't aware that there were timestamps, correct?
I was not aware.
And a big part of the investigation was trying to create a timeline, right?
Yes.
And what you determined, based on your investigation, is that Natalie Freeman and JT texted their parents almost at exactly the same time, didn't they?
Very similar times, yes.
And you determined that Brad Freeman got to the Vance Street residence approximately 10:28 or so, right?
Yes.
Did you ever discover any witness that saw JT out of the house after 10:16?
After 10:16, for sure, no. I have approximately 10 o'clock and approximate times, but no, I can't be for sure.
With regards to Brian Johnson, was it July 28th when you interviewed him?
Let us find that page, sir. Yes, July the 28th.
Okay. And you indicated that you asked him whether there was any controlled substances used between him and JT, and he denied that, correct?
Correct.
Now, one of the things you were waiting on was the medical examiner's report, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that report, did you ever request a controlled substances screen, toxicology screen for JT Taylor?
I personally did not, no.
Okay. And so the medical examiner did not, to your knowledge, test for controlled substances or screen for controlled substances, is that correct?
To my knowledge, they did not.
One of the last things you did was, on August 5th, was to get the pictures, correct?
Yes.
And so that was sort of the end of the investigation, then the charging decisions were made, correct?
Yes.
And the decision was made to charge the employee at the ABC store that sold the Jack Daniels, right?
That's correct.
And what was his name? Was it James Wilson? Does that sound familiar?
Yes, James Gordon Wilson.
And the decision was made not to arrest him, but to cite him, which is to just serve him with a document that told him he had to go to court. Is that correct?
Objection, Raleigh.
Sustained.
Was the decision made to arrest Kim and Chip Matthews?
Objection to Raleigh.
Overruled.
Yes.
Why?
That just came up during the investigation over lots of time. The final decision was that we were going to make full custody arrest of all parties originally.
So then that changed as to the ABC employee?
It did.
Okay. And the decision was also made that none of the bartenders would be charged, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then that Natalie Freeman, Anna Ergish, they wouldn't get any additional charges, correct?
I don't believe there could be any additional charges for Anna. She was already charged with it, but the decision was made for Natalie not to pursue any criminal charges.
If I could just have 1 moment, Your Honor.
You may.
With regards to Kim Matthews and your interview of her, she indicated at some point she felt you were being hard on her. Is that true?
That is correct.
But she continued to answer your questions, correct?
She did.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Hulen, in regards to kind of the timeline, Mr. Miles asked you about Brian Johnson. Based on your investigation, does it appear that he's probably the last person to see JT alive?
Probably.
That we know of.
I don't think we could ever say for sure, but yes.
We don't have anyone putting him outside the house after.
After they talked, no.
You mentioned that the decision was made not to charge the bartenders, and I think you talked a little bit about this on direct examination, but what were some consideration in why the bartenders were not charged?
Well, there was two main people in charge of the bar, a Miss Foster and a Mrs. Miller. They took turns between them bar backing to bring the glasses into the house to be cleaned, and then the other person would take the lead at the bar, back and forth throughout the night. There was also evidence of sometimes it was poured. Both of them denied pouring it to the underage people. And it was left out. I did not have enough probable cause I could not prove that Miss Foster or Miss Miller or anybody else from Parazad served JT or any of the underage people alcohol.
And at any point while you were interviewing the teenagers, did they say, this particular bartender handed me a glass of wine?
They could not.
And maybe if they even didn't know their name, but said, lady with long brown hair or anything like that.
It was just servers, and unfortunately, but expectedly, due to the alcohol consumption, their memories were not perfect.
And Sergeant Hulen, all of those teenagers that you interviewed said that they picked up glasses off the tables at some point.
Yes.
This, the Taylors were consulted in this case. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
You testified that you've been a Raleigh police officer for how many years?
It'll be 18 years in September.
And and you said, I believe you worked on were a detective in an assault unit, is that right?
Robberies, armed robberies.
During the course of your experience, if with the Raleigh Police Department, if victims of any type of crime want to be involved in meetings, is that the normal course of business with the Raleigh Police Department and the Wake County DA's office that you know of?
Yes, that would be standard. Some cases, we may not do what the victim's family or alleged victim's families want, but we would, a lot of times, if not all the times, ask the victims how they want to proceed. If they don't want to go for a court case, if they just want it to be over, we will take that into consideration. It's not the only factor, but between myself and the DA's office, but that is always taken into account.
And charges were not brought immediately in this case, so June 30th of 2014, you did not cite anybody, arrest anybody at that point, did you, sir?
Correct.
This investigation lasted over a month.
It went into the month of August, correct.
Thank you, Sergeant Hulen. I don't have any further questions.
Brief cross-examination.
Just one. You only identified 2 bartenders that worked that evening, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have here.
Further direct.
There you go. Thank you.
You may step down, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Please call your next witness. You may.
You're on a safe call. Agent Eric Hills this day.
Sir, if you would, please place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agent Hill, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name for the record?
Eric Hill.
And Agent Hill, how are you employed, sir?
I'm employed as a special agent with the North Carolina Alcohol Law Enforcement Division.
And what are your duties and responsibilities there?
Mainly we work under the discretion of the governor, but our primary focus is the Chapter 18B laws, which cover alcohol sale, possession, and manufacture.
And Agent Hill, alcoholic beverages, what's the kind of, you mentioned you're involved in helping regulate and enforce laws regarding alcoholic beverages. What's the alcoholic beverage considered here in North Carolina?
Here in North Carolina, an alcoholic beverage is considered any beverage that contains more than 0.5 or 1% alcohol by volume.
And we've heard testimony during the course of this trial regarding red wine, white wine, and champagne. Agent Hill, based on your training and experience, are those types of alcoholic beverages here in North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware of any kind of non-alcoholic wine or champagne?
Yes, sir.
What would that be?
Basically, non-alcoholic wine and champagne is going to be your sparkling wine, your grape juice, and things of that nature.
Any evidence that you gathered, and you've been involved in this case since early on?
Yes, sir.
Correct, sir? Any evidence that it was sparkling water, sparkling wine that was served here in this matter?
No, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm approaching you, Agent Hill, with what has been introduced previously as State's Exhibit 48.
Okay.
If you'll take a look at that document and tell me if you recognize what that document depicts.
Pictures of bottles of wine set up at the table at the wedding.
Okay. And those bottles of wine that are just depicted there in that photograph, would they be considered alcoholic beverages here in North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
And tell us a little bit about why, sir.
Basically, these bottles of wine will possess the alcohol content to basically what they're unfortified wine, meaning that they're bottles of wine that contain less than 16% alcohol by content, generally referred to as your table wine.
And table wine, you said, is an unfortified wine. What was there? Fortified wine?
Yes, there is a fortified wine. That wine contains a higher alcohol content, 16% or above.
But the general table wine and the wine that's been described here during the course of this trial, you would consider unfortified wine?
Yes, sir.
But an alcoholic beverage here in the state of North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Agent Hill. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
No questions.
You may step down, sir.
Thank you. Your Honor, that would be the live testimony for the state, or witness testimony for the state, I guess I should say. We have entered into several stipulations regarding some evidence in the case, regarding toxicology reports, medical examiner report, and a 911 call that was played. So, Your Honor, this time I have the toxicology report labeled as State's Exhibit number 59. The medical examiner's report listed as 60, and identified as 60, and the 911 call is 61. I would ask to introduce those at this time and publish each to the members of the jury.
And you have stipulated to the admissibility.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, State's Exhibits 59, 60, and 61 are admitted in evidence, may be published to the jury.
Thank you. And I would start with the toxicology report, and if it's okay with Your Honor, I'll pass those out at the same time with the other deputies.
Sheriff, if you would assist, yes.
61, 911 call from the Matthews residence to the members of the jury using the overhead audio speakers.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you.
Sunday, June 29, 2014, 01:18 and 41 seconds.
911, what's the location of your emergency? 904 Vance Street. Can you repeat that for verification? 904 Vance Street, Raleigh. Okay, and your name? Kim Matthews. And the phone number you're calling from? 919-961-1644. Okay, tell me exactly what happened. Okay. What?
She's intoxicated. But she needs to be brought to the ER. I'm a physician. I'm right here to come along and get her.
Okay, I mean, what is she, for intoxication, is she not?
Yes, she's very intoxicated. I'm having trouble getting her aroused.
Okay.
I thought she was.
All right, are you with her now?
She's doing. I'm right here with her, you bet. I can resuscitate if you need to, but come along.
Okay, how old is she?
About 15.
You said 15?
18, I think.
18, okay. Is she awake?
No, but you can barely get her awake.
Is she breathing?
She's breathing, and I'm a physician. I can resuscitate.
Hold on 1 second, I was updating the... Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, is she breathing normally?
No, she's heavily sedated.
Okay, what did she take? Was it just alcohol?
As far as I know, just alcohol.
All right, well, I'll send paramedics to help you stay on the line. I'll tell you exactly what to do next to reassure her. It helps on the way when she wakes up. When she wakes up, don't let her have anything to eat or drink. It might make her sick or cause problems for the doctor. And just let her rest in the most comfortable position or wait for help to arrive. I want you to watch her very closely. If she becomes less awake and vomits, quickly turn her on her side. Please put away any family pets. Gather her medication. Unlock the door, turn on the outside lights, and have someone meet the paramedic. And if she gets worse in any way, call us back immediately for further instructions.
All righty. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Bye-bye.
Sure.
Your Honor, at this time, that would be the evidence for the state, and the state would rest its case at this point.
The state has rested in presentation of evidence at this point. Before we proceed further, I ask you to step from the courtroom, but it'll be a good time for a morning recess for you as well. Before I do that, though, let me ask the lawyers to approach on schedule. you can see, I just discussed with lawyers scheduling and going forward. So before I send you from the courtroom, let me ask that those exhibits be returned as well. If you'll retrieve those. And as always, do not take an exhibit out of the courtroom unless I've instructed you to do so. As I told you, the state has rested in presentation of evidence at this time. The defendant has the opportunity to offer evidence. I ask now, will there be evidence for the defendants?
No, Your Honor.
The defendants rest as well at this time. So members of the jury, all of the evidence in this case has been presented to you. Later, it will be your duty to decide from the evidence what the facts are and apply the law that I instruct you on to those facts in an attempt to arrive at unanimous verdicts about the offenses which the defendants are charged. Prior to your hearing my instructions on the law, and of course prior to your deliberations, you'll be hearing the arguments of the lawyers. But before you hear their arguments, I'm required to confer with them on the record out of your presence with regard to the applicable law. It's called a charge conference. Very succinctly, I will be discussing with the lawyers what I'll be saying to you and receiving their input as well. I need to have you out of the courtroom while we do that. And looking at the time and conferring with the lawyers, it would be my preference, and theirs too, to have both arguments made one after the other and not interrupted by a lunch break. It very well may be that the arguments could be made by lunchtime, the normal stopping time, but we have decided to stop early for lunch. Let you go ahead and get a lunch break. I hope it doesn't inconvenience you too much. And then come back, and we'll go into arguments, followed by the court's instructions, and then followed by your beginning of deliberations. So we're going to stay here and take care of these matters. That is the charge conference, getting some things ready for you for arguments and for my instructions to you, including hopefully I'll have some of my instructions in writing for you, which is what I've been working on here. And so I'm going to send you on to lunch. We will then take a lunch break after we finish here, and I'll ask that you be back at 1 o'clock. Trusting that'll be okay for you. I say to you again, remember and follow all of my instructions to you with regard to your duties as jurors. And do not yet allow your minds to be made up in this case because you have not heard those arguments of the lawyers or the court's instructions as to the law. Again, as I said, remember and follow those and all other instructions. Return ready to resume at 1 p.m. Thank you for the alteration in our schedule a little bit, but I suggest to you it is a fair way for the parties and better for you as well to have it presented this way. So the jury is excused from the courtroom. Everyone else remain in place. We will be dealing with some matters here out of the presence of the jury, and then we will go into a charge conference, which I've just explained what is involved there. If you would like to leave at this time, you may do so, and that'll save you interrupting us or distracting us while we're going about some of these matters. So I'll pause for a minute. If any of you would like to leave, I'm not requiring you to leave or suggesting you leave, but basically what's going to happen is I'm going to hear some motions, and then I will conduct a charge conference, and then we'll take a lunch break. But if anybody would like to leave, you may do so at this time. When we finish these matters, we'll come back to court at 1 o'clock after that time. So if you'd like to go, you may go at this time.